Heidi ho, my peeps, and welcome to another Bath Time Confessional. This Bath Time Confessional is a special request. Someone wanted to know how Grant and I met. Now, I've probably done this video already. I can't remember because I'm scatterbrained. But just in case I haven't actually done a full-on video about it, I thought tonight would be a nice time. I was with my mom at rehab tonight until 7:30ish, and so I've got a couple of days before she goes back home. She's being released. Maybe tomorrow or perhaps the next day she'll be released home to hospice. She's losing her battle pretty quickly. She's very tired and in a lot of pain. So, you know, we're heading into that cycle where the hospice people keep her pretty well medicated with pain meds, and, you know, basically you just open the windows when it's pretty, and you ask her what she wants to see on TV, and you ask her what she needs, and you hold her hand, and you just sit. Sometimes that's all you can do, is just sit with your loved one. So I'm heading into that phase, but I've got a couple of nights here at home before I do that, and I really wanted to give you this confessional. So without further ado, in December of 2005, I shut the doors on the business that I had worked in for 15 years and walked away and became unemployed. And I have been more or less unemployed since then. I haven't had a regular job. I've had sources of income, but nothing that was, you know, working for somebody else. So shut the doors. In September, in fact, it was Labor Day, 2006, I had, it was a weekend, I believe it was a Sunday, and my friend Tom, whom I had been engaged to, and with whom I had lived for several years, he helped me raise my boys for a couple years, we narrowly missed making the mistake of getting married, but we broke up, and then we remained friends, you know, all those years. So he had come over to help me fill a dumpster. I was doing some cleanup around my place, and we worked all day on Saturday filling this dumpster. It was a big 40-yard bin, big, huge thing. Exhausted, you know, I made dinner. I put him in my bed in my bedroom, and I slept in the recliner in the living room. So, long around 7 o'clock in the morning, the dogs wake me up. They're barking. They're standing at the window and at the door, and they're just barking like hell. And I kind of, you know, open one eye, look out the window, and I see this man. He's walking down my driveway toward my house. He was about midway down the driveway, and I'll never forget what he looked like. He had curly grayish hair that was kind of long. He was wearing an army cap. He was wearing a Vietnam era camo shirt, you know, button-up camo shirt, and I believe he was wearing jeans, and he just kind of wafted down the driveway, this long, skinny guy, and I watched him, and I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Now, it wasn't like, oh, what an attractive man, or oh, what a cutie, or ooh, you know, fresh meat, or anything like that. It was just this feeling in the back of my neck. I remember touching my neck like this. And so I'm watching him for a second, and he comes up to the gate that was closed. So I go outside. Hey, how you doing? How can I help you? And he said, well, my car broke down up at the top of the road, and I'm wondering if I can use your phone. And I thought, yeah, right, you know, use my phone and, you know, dismember me or whatever. So I said, yeah, sure, stay here, I'll go get the phone. So I did. I went out and got the phone, and Tom was there, so I wasn't all that freaked out. I knew if I started screaming, he'd hear me. So went and got the phone, came back out, and this is, I don't even think I had a cell phone at this point. This was just one of those big old cordless phones like we used to have in our houses. Anyway, so I brought that out, and he punched in a number, and he's talking to someone about this car, and can they come and get him, and when can they get him, and blah, blah, blah. So by that time, I figured he was kind of harmless, and he said, "Could you please take me up to the top of the road? I need to lock some stuff in the back of my car." And I figured, well, I'm going to live dangerously. Sure, I'll take you up to the top of the road. So I did. I drove him up there, and sure enough, there's his car. And in the back were solid copper panels that comprised a solar water heater. You mount these panels up on your roof, and you have a supply of water that goes up, and it goes through all the little zigzaggy tubes, and then it feeds down into either your hot water heater or some other contraption. And it was a passive solar hot water heater. And he wanted to lock it up because these things were all made of copper, and that's back when, you were getting a fortune for copper, which you are not any longer. But, although that could change if we go to war. But, so, yeah, all right, we did that, and we started to talk, and we talked, and we talked, and I took him back to the house, and we talked, and we talked, and I went and got us some coffee, and we went outside, and we talked, and we talked. We talked for 3 hours straight. I mean, there were so many things we had in common, so many ideas and interests and stuff, and it just kept going and going. Finally, I see my friend Tom, right, and he's poking his head out, and he's looking around the house, and he's got this worried look on his face. And I was thinking, I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking, oh no, what's Cheryl got us into now? So finally he comes out, I introduced him, and then he went on doing other stuff around the place, but still like keeping his eye out on me, make sure I wasn't, handing over the keys to the farm to some, crazy weirdo. So finally, Grant's brother gets there, picks him up, and before he left, we exchanged phone numbers. Well, that was a Sunday. He called me on Tuesday. We talked for a while on the phone, and then he said, "Hey, do you want to go I've got to go into town to pick up some bike parts on Friday. Do you want to go get tacos? There's this great place to get tacos." So I said, "Sure." He picked me up. We did that. Drove home, and we haven't been apart since. It was this instantaneous camaraderie, sort of, I don't know, not a soulmate. I mean, at that point, that isn't what it felt like to me, although it does now. Just like, a really cool guy to hang out with. So, our relationship progressed really rapidly. Grant just decided he was in love, and he would do stuff like he'd stop at my house and leave little love notes for me here and there where he knew I was going to find them. Just really pursued me. Pursued me hard. And I remember telling him at one point, I said, "Listen, dude," I said, "you really need to just dial it down a notch." I said, this is not my first rodeo. I've done this before. You're not in love. We don't know each other well enough yet. Just let this thing run its course. I give it a year, 18 months. That's about how long my relationships last. Trust me, you're going to get bored. And he said, "No, I'm not." He said, I've found my soulmate. I found the woman I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, and I know it's you. And I thought, oh, geez, I've picked up a stalker. Oh, no. Well, actually, what happened, of course, obviously, is that over the course of time, we forged a lifelong relationship. And I did a lot of the things I normally do, trying to push him away, which I was really good at doing. And previously, didn't have any luck with Grant, though. I never managed to push him away. So, over the course of, it took about 3 years for us to really solidify the fact that we were probably a lifelong couple. And after 5 years, we knew that we were. We're going on year number 11. This Labor Day will be our 11th anniversary of meeting one another. And it's, I've actually put him through a lot of crap because I've had a lot of bad relationships in the past. Pretty much every one I ever had was a bad relationship. And Grant had only had 2. Well, 1. I mean, he never really had a girlfriend through high school. He was one of those really, really smart, kind of nerd dudes with the slide rule in his pocket, and his head was always in math and engineering and other interesting things, literature. I mean, he was smart across both spectrums. The literary spectrum, you know, words, as well as math and critical thinking and all that. So he was, you know, just one of those guys. You know, one of the guys that were the valedictorians in their class. He wasn't, but he could have been if he'd given a shit about it, which he didn't. Anyhow, so you know, he was like that through high school, and then he started college at Berkeley, switched to University of Oregon, which is where his dad had graduated, and he was going to do electrical engineering. Then he switched from electrical engineering to pre-med. He decided he hated pre-med, and about that time, the draft started, and he was sick of college, but he, you know, was afraid of being conscripted. So what he ended up doing was volunteering, and I mean, you know, signing up as a volunteer. He didn't wait to get drafted, and that turned out to be in his favor because he ended up with an MOS stateside, and he was part of that at the Arlington Cemetery, where they do ceremonies there, and then they did color guard duties, like for the president and different things like that. So he was in Washington, D.C. for his entire hitch. He gets out of the Army and he goes back to California, and he got wound up in a group called the Moonies. I don't know if any of you guys remember these people, but they were real famous back in the 70s. The Reverend Moon married all of these people in Madison Square Garden, and it was in People magazine, and Grant was one of those couples. He and his wife were one of those 2,500 couples in that particular group that Reverend Moon married. And Reverend Moon actually matched up all of these couples. So, you know, he'd match up a couple. If the people if the two liked one another, they'd get married. If not, they'd say, okay, bring me somebody else. So finally, Grant and his wife matched up and decided to get married, which they did. And they had some kids, two absolutely marvelous children, whom I adore. And then they split up. She didn't want to be married to him anymore. So he came back to California, and he and I met about 5 years after they split up. Well, all that time, he'd only had one girlfriend / wife, and that was his wife. So I was the second to come along in his life. So he and I were diametric opposites. I had had tons. I mean, so many boyfriends, I can't even remember them all. And he had had one before he met me. So in some weird way, that kind of balanced itself out. So here we are, almost 11 years later, and I wouldn't trade him for anything. He is just as wild and weird as wonderful and smart and loving and exasperating and thoughtful and understanding and insensitive and sensitive as anybody could be. He's the most interesting person I have ever met. One of the smartest people I've ever known, right up there in the top 3. And, you know, he's made me happy all these years, and I feel incredibly lucky and incredibly blessed to, you know, have been matched up with him by the universe. I'm eternally and unutterably grateful. So that is the story of how I met Grant, and I'm sticking to it. I will talk to you guys later. Bye!